Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the CTY group of schools e-learning program for the senior secondary school one, and the subject is financial accounting for senior secondary school one. This is the third week of the third term of this academic session. Our topics remain final accounts. As we have been discussed before, final accounts has three major aspects, and we have so far discussed two of the three aspects, which were the aspect of the trading account, where we are able to determine the cost of goods available for sales, the cost of goods sold, and most importantly the gross loss or gross profit of a particular business. Also, we have looked at the profit and loss account, where we are able to determine the net profit or loss of a business as at a particular period in time. Today, we are going to be looking at the final aspect of the final account, which is the balance sheet, statement of financial position. Balance sheet, which is now known as the statement of financial position, is a statement drawn up at the end of each financial period, which shows the assets, liabilities, and capital of a business organization in a well-arranged form. It is not an account, but a statement. Balance sheet shows the financial position of a business at a particular period, which is usually a year. Balance sheet is not part of the double entry principle, and it does not have debit or credit side. I mean, balance sheet is not part of the double entry, therefore it has neither debit nor credit side. From there, let us look at the nature of a balance sheet. Balance sheet is drawn at a certain date, and headed thus: balance sheet as at 31st of a particular month of a particular year. For example, we can have balance sheet as at 31st December 2013, or balance sheet as at 30th September 2015, or balance sheet as at 28th February 2017. Whichever the accounting period used, the heading of a balance sheet reads thus: balance sheet as at 31st of a month, of a particular month, of a particular year. Balance sheet is divided into two parts. Showing on the left side is the liabilities and capital, while the right side shows the current and fixed assets. So on the left hand side of the balance sheet we have liabilities and capital, while on the right side we have current and fixed assets. Now let us discuss all the particulars of a balance sheet. To start with, let's look at assets. Assets may be defined as the resources, properties, or possession of a business. They are owned by a business and are expected to be of some future benefits. Assets can be defined as the resources, properties, or possession of a business. They are properties owned by a business which are expected to be of some future benefits. Examples of assets are land and building, furniture and fittings, motor van, cash, bank, stock, goodwill, etc. Assets can be divided into fixed assets and current assets. Assets can be divided into fixed assets and current assets. Fixed assets. This refers to long-lasting properties of a business which are acquired for use within the organization and not for sale to customers. Fixed assets are referred to as the long-lasting properties of a business which are acquired for use within the organization and not meant for sales to customer. So fixed assets are not meant to be sold, they are to be used to give a future revenue to the business. E.g., the examples of fixed assets are land and building, machinery, plants, furniture and fittings, motor vehicle, etc. Current assets. Current assets. Current assets refers to assets which are usually held for a short period of time for the purpose of conversion in the ordinary course of business. Examples are cash, bank, debtors, stock, etc. Current assets are held for a short period of time for the purpose of conversion in the ordinary course of business. And the good example of current assets are cash in hand, cash at bank, debtors, stock, etc. Forms of assets. Before moving on to liabilities, let us talk about form of assets that we have. Forms of assets of a business organization. We have fictitious assets. Fictitious assets. These are assets which do not have any realizable value. Assets that do not have any realizable value is being referred to as fictitious assets. And a good example of fictitious assets is the preliminary expenses. Preliminary expenses is the expenses incurred while incorporating a company, and it is just a fictitious asset because it has no realizable value. Intangible assets. Intangible assets. These are properties of a firm that do not have any physical existence, although they have values representing them. These are properties of a firm that do not have any physical existence, although they have values representing them. Examples of intangible assets are goodwill, trademark, patent, copyright, etc. They don't have any physical property. They cannot be seen, they cannot be touched, but they have value. Tangible assets. These are assets that can be seen or touched. These are the real assets of the business which can be seen or touched. Examples include land, machinery, equipment, etc. Also, we have liquid assets. Liquid assets are assets that can be easily converted to cash. So any asset that can be easily converted to cash is referred to as liquid assets. Examples are debtors, securities, etc. Also, we have wasting assets. Wasting assets are assets that are used up over a period of time. They are assets that when they are using it, they will be used up over a period of time. Example of such assets are mines, timber, crude oil, gold, etc. So that's the some of the forms of assets that we have. Also, let us talk about the classification of assets, how assets are to be grouped and arranged in the balance sheet. This follows two ways. Assets can be grouped in their realizable order or in their permanence order. So to start with, let's look at how to arrange assets in realizability order in our balance sheet. Realizability. This means that assets can be arranged in the order of convertibility to cash. So for assets that are arranged in form of realizability are assets that are arranged in the means of that they can be easily converted to cash. So realizability, the arrangement is as follows. You start with the current assets and you start with cash, debtor, stock, followed by investment. Then you move to the fixed assets, from the furniture and fittings to plant and machinery to land and building. Moving on from that, we have another way of grouping our assets, which is permanence. That is in their permanent order. And in this form, we are going to start with the fixed assets. So fixed assets, we have land and building, followed by plant and machinery, followed by furniture and fittings. Then we have the current assets. Among the current assets, we start with the stock, debtors, bank, and cash. So that is the category, how to arrange or group assets in a balance sheet. From there, we need to look at some of the characteristics of fixed assets as well as some of the characteristics of current assets. Characteristics of fixed assets. Fixed assets are long lasting. That is, they can last more than a year. They can last for a long period of time. They are not bought for resale, so they are not meant to be sold in the course of business. They are held purposely to earn revenue. That is, they are held to produce means of earning revenue for the business. Then any expenditure incurred on fixed assets is capital in nature. That is, they are not revenue expenditure, they are capital expenditure. Then move to the characteristics of current assets. The characteristics of current assets include: when current assets are held for resale at a profit. For example, stock are held for resale at a profit. Number 2, current assets have a short life span. For example, cash can be spent at any time. Easily realizable. Current assets can be easily realized. That is, they can be easily turned to cash, e.g. cash itself, debtors, cash at bank, and stock. From there, having talked extensively about assets of a business, now let us look at the liability side of the balance sheet. What do we mean by liabilities? What do we mean by liabilities? Liabilities are obligations arising from a business past transactions. Liabilities are obligations arising from a business past transactions. It refers to the indebtedness of a business to outsiders. it refers to the indebtedness of a business to outsiders. Liability is a claim by the outsider on the asset of the business. That is, the amount owing by the business to the outsider is what we refer to as liabilities. And examples of liabilities include debenture, loan, overdraft, creditors, etc. Liabilities can be summarily divided into two major parts. We have long-term liabilities, we have current liabilities. Long-term liability first. Long-term liabilities are long-term indebtedness of a firm which are not due for payment within one accounting period. So we are talking about long-term liability as the debt of a business organization which are not expected to be paid within one accounting period. Examples are debenture, bond, etc. Now, current liabilities. Current liabilities are liabilities which are due for settlement within 1 year. That is, they are due to be paid within one accounting period. They are paid within a period of time, usually a year. And examples of current liabilities are creditors, overdrafts, accrued expenses, income in advance, etc. What are the characteristics of current liabilities? 1. Current liabilities are payable within one accounting period, that is within 1 year, and current liabilities are owned to outsiders. Having extensively discussed both the assets and liabilities of part of the balance sheet, there is a form of liabilities that we need to talk about briefly, which is contingent liabilities. A form of liability that we have to briefly talk about. What is contingent liability? Contingent liability is a form of liabilities which describes obligations which will arrive in future only through a specified event. They are conditions which exist at the balance sheet date where the outcome depends on the occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events. So contingent liabilities are just liabilities that cannot be determined because its occurrence depends on future events. Example is bill receivable discounted. Now, final part of a balance sheet. Capital is the original money invested in a business by the owner. Capital is the original money invested in a business by the owner. Capital is also referred to as the net worth or owner's equity. So capital can also be known as the net worth or owner's equity of a business organization. And it is the indebtedness of a business to its owner. That is, the amount owed by the business to its owner is what referred to as the capital. Also, capital can also be defined as the total resources in cash which is used to establish a business. Capital can also be defined as the total resources in cash which is used to establish a business. From there, let us look at the forms of capital that we have. Forms of capital briefly. 1. Equity capital. Equity capital. This is the amount contributed by the shareholders plus any retained earning. Equity capital is the amount contributed by the shareholders plus any retained earning. Loan capital. This is the total amount of money the business borrowed from external sources, from third party. Examples are debentures, bonds, etc. Then we have working capital. Working capital. Working capital is the excess of current assets over the current liability. Is the excess of current assets over the current liability, and it is the capital required for the day-to-day running of a business organization. So it is capital required for the day-to-day running of the business. More so, we have capital employed. Capital employed is simply means the excess of total assets over current liability. The excess of total assets over current liability. That is, when you have the total asset side, then you less current liabilities. That will give you capital employed. Overtrading. Overtrading means that an organization has no working capital to meet its obligation. That can arise when the current liabilities of an organization is more than its current assets. So overtrading will occur when the current liabilities of an organization is more than its current assets, and the business will not have working capital to meet its obligations. Drawings. These are the goods or cash withdrawn by the owner of a business at intervals for his own use. The goods withdrawn or cash withdrawn by the owner of the business for his personal use is what is referred to as the drawings. Now, having explained all the particulars of a balance sheet, we need to briefly look at the format of a balance sheet before we start illustration on how to prepare balance sheet. So the format, we take the two methods, because we have two methods of preparing balance sheet. Also, we have the conventional method, which is popularly known as the T format method, and the vertical method. Now, illustrate the format of a balance sheet. Balance sheet as at 31st December 2015. We have the left hand side and the right hand side. On the left hand side, we have the capital. You will add the net profit to it. But if the business has net loss in its trading activities, you will less the net loss from capital. So capital, add net profit or less net loss. Then less cash or good drawing. So drawing is going to be less from it. Then you add long-term liabilities. Then you add also current liabilities. So in this our format, long-term liabilities include debenture and bond, and we have loan, creditors and bank overdraft as under the current liabilities. All these are totaled on the left hand side of the balance sheet. On the right hand side of the balance sheet, we have the assets of the business. And the assets start with the fixed assets, because we said that assets can be grouped into two, or can be divided into two: fixed assets and current assets. So under the fixed assets, we have the land and building, plant and machinery, premises, equipment, motor van, furniture and fittings, investment, goodwill. Okay, we have furniture and fittings. So all those things are totaled. In balance sheet also, you can still have intangible assets such as investments and goodwill. You will add them to it. Then you move to the current assets such as the stock, debtors, bank, cash at bank, as well as the cash in hand. Everything will be added together. So the total of this on the right hand side must be equal to the total on the left hand side of a balance sheet. From there, let us now discuss the vertical format of a balance sheet. Vertical format of a balance sheet. Balance sheet as at 31st December 2015, we have 3 nairas. We have 3 nairas as our denomination. One on the extreme right hand, one on the extreme left hand, and one in the middle. Now, to start with, you will start with your fixed assets such as land and building, plants and machinery, premises, equipment, motor van, furniture. You total everything. If you have intangible assets such as investment and goodwill, you add them to it. Then you total your current assets such as stock, debtors, cash at bank and cash in hand. Everything will be total. That's our total assets. then you less current liabilities from it. You less current liabilities from it, such as loan, creditors and bank overdraft. So the total of the current liabilities will be deducted from the total of assets, then that will give us our capital employed. That will give us our capital employed. So how are we going to determine our capital employed? That leads us to financed by. So what is our capital employed? Then we have capital, hard net profit. If it's net loss, you less it. Then you less cash or good drawing, you less drawing. Then you had long-term liability. That is the capital employed. So that is the brief explanation on the format of a balance sheet. So the next class we are going to be looking at illustrations on how to prepare a balance sheet using the two formats that we have been using so far in our lectures. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.